This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
March for Life. Good afternoon. Welcome aboard. Tens of thousands of pro-life activists have descended on Washington today for the 52nd annual March for Life. It ends with a rally on the steps of the Supreme Court. Vice President J.D. Vance is there. So, too, is President Trump. Sort of. He addressed the crowd with a videotaped message. And just yesterday, Trump pardoned 23 pro-life activists who were imprisoned under the Biden administration for protesting at abortion clinics. March for Life organizer Jeannie Mancini says there are a lot of fallacies when it comes to the abortion issue.
Abortion isn't healthcare. Pregnancy is not a disease. It's a healthy, miraculous, beautiful, growing thing. So the bottom line, abortion is not healthcare.
Congress last night passed the Born Alive Infant Protection Act and requires doctors provide the same degree of care if a child is born alive during an abortion as they would during a normal delivery. Josiah Presley is an abortion survivor and spoke today at the pro-life rally.
We all have a voice. We don't need bigger voices. We need more voices. And you've been given a voice. You have a sphere of influence that you're called to use that voice. And so I would ask you, use that voice to be a voice for the voiceless.
Every day in America, 3,000 babies are lost to the abortion holocaust. President Trump's pick for Secretary of Defense expected to win confirmation tonight in the U.S. Senate. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, not a fan of Pete Hegseth.
Of all the people we could have as Secretary of Defense, is Pete Hegseth really the best one we've got? Come on, you know he is, and you know he's not even close.
Hegseth's promised to bring a warrior culture to the Pentagon, America's largest government agency. A final confirmation vote is expected after 9 p.m. It only takes a simple majority to win confirmation. President Trump's executive order that ends birthright citizenship is on pause for now. A Ronald Reagan-appointed judge in Seattle calls it blatantly unconstitutional. He's blocked the order for 2 weeks as 22 states challenge it in court. Birthright citizenship says children born in this country are citizens of this country, regardless the legal status of their parents. ICE agents have arrested over 530 illegal immigrants in just the 3 or 4 days since the president took office. New York City Council member Robert Holden.
I don't think they're going to just start deporting anybody. They're going to focus on the criminals. Who would be against that?
This is not mass deportation of good people. This is mass deportation of the worst of the worst.
Vicky Palladino's a crime-fighting activist in the Big Apple. The ICE arrest targeted dangerous gang members in more than a half dozen sanctuary cities. Reporter Scott Pringle has more on one of those ICE raids in Newark, New Jersey.
Newark officials say ICE agents detained citizens, illegal immigrants, and a U.S. military veteran without showing a warrant. This was at the Ocean Seafood Depot business on Thursday. Mayor Baraka calling it an egregious violation of the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, which protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. ICE did release a statement saying they may encounter U.S. citizens while conducting field work and may request ID, as was the case in Newark on Thursday, but they would not comment on the specifics of the raid. Scott Pringle, New Jersey.
Did you know your tax dollars have been funding the flood of illegal immigrants who've been massing at our southern border the past several years?
At least $6 billion, a very close collaborative partnership between the Biden-Harris State Department and 230 NGOs and 15 UN agencies to send hundreds of millions of U.S. tax dollars to migrants on the trail, helping them, sustain them in their northward trek to the United States border.
Todd Bensman with the Center for Immigration Studies. The terror group Hamas will free 4 more hostages tomorrow. The BBC's Yolanda Nell.
In the second exchange of the ceasefire deal, which came into force last Sunday, Hamas is expected to release 4 Israeli women, both soldiers and civilians.
President Trump is taking the first trip of his second term today. He's on both coasts, touring hurricane-wrecked North Carolina and then later on fire-ravaged California. California Governor Gavin Newsom.
I hope he comes with the spirit of cooperation and collaboration. That's the spirit to which we welcome him. I've said this many times, open hand, not a closed fist.
Trump's threatening to withhold aid to California if it doesn't change its water policies, which he says have made those fires worse. Tom Waite with CBS News in L.A.
People here in the fire zones are exasperated. They're heartbroken. They're devastated. They've lost everything in many cases. And the last thing they want right now is to deal with politics. They want that taken out of the situation. They just want help. They want to recover and they want to rebuild.
The California wildfires could wind up being the most costly natural disaster in U.S. history. There is rain in the forecast there this weekend.
It's a good news, bad news situation. We need the rain, but a lot of rain is just going to act as runoff and it could trigger mudslides and rock slides.
Fox News meteorologist Janice Dean. The Trump White House has ordered the declassification of 3 high-level assassinations from the 1960s.
President Kennedy was shot today just as his motorcade left downtown Dallas.
Senator Robert Kennedy was shot at his headquarters at the Ambassador Hotel.
There is shock, anger, and humiliation in America this morning because of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King.
3 violent acts that for many defined the turbulent 60s in the U.S. Decades later, questions still remain about the deaths and those who committed the crimes. Trump's pick for Health and Human Services Secretary is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He has his doubts that Sirhan Sirhan was his father's killer. Trump signed the order Thursday, promising to release information on the murders. Trump said many people have been waiting for decades for this information and added that everything will be revealed. I'm Michael Kastner.
2 giant pandas made their American debut today. Bao Li and Qing Bao can be seen at the National Zoo in Washington. The pandas arrived in D.C. from China in October. If you can't see them in person, no worries. The zoo does have a giant panda cam that's live every day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And still to come on the Noon Report, a Friday edition, opioid settlement money, Ryan Corbett's pastor, and Bills Eagles in action this weekend.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams, tracking a pretty decent winter sports weekend coming up in the area. Moderately cold, a little sun, a little snow. Forecast details are up in 10.
All right, Kevin, we'll see you then. Let's check the stories making news where you live. The Buffalo Bills and Philadelphia Eagles just a win away from the Super Bowl. Philly's not been to the football finale since they lost to the Chiefs 3 years ago. Buffalo plays the Chiefs on Sunday. Bills quarterback Josh Allen.
When you're trying to sleep and it's all you can think about, because it's all I think about right now is just trying to put my best foot forward and win this football game. But sometimes the ball's gonna roll the opposite way from you. Sometimes it's gonna bounce into your arms, and just taking advantage of every opportunity that comes our way. And this is a fun game to play in, I'll tell you that.
KC's knocked the Bills out of the playoffs in 3 of the past 4 years. Kickoff for that one set for 6:30 on Sunday on CBS. The Eagles-Washington Commanders game will start at 3 o'clock on Fox on Sunday. Pro-family activists are applauding the executive order from President Trump declaring there only are 2 genders, male and female. That's it. Michael Geer with the Pennsylvania Family Institute.
The notion that a president, let's say 10 or 20 years ago, would make such an executive order, people would think, well, that's absurd.
Yeah.
But we know where the ideology has gone, and this is a breath of fresh air.
Geer says the Trump order on gender will balance the scales in the culture wars. We'll be talking more about this issue in just a few minutes on Capital Connection. New York and Pennsylvania are getting hundreds of millions of dollars as part of a massive settlement with Purdue Pharma, the drug makers accused of contributing to America's opioid epidemic. Purdue Pharma will pay nearly $7.5 billion to resolve opioid lawsuits in 15 states. Pennsylvania expected to receive more than $200 million. New York will get about $250 million. The death of a Rochester, New York native, Robert Brooks, at the Marcy Correctional Facility in Oneida County, New York, has triggered a huge debate about prison reform. Comptroller Tom DiNapoli.
That incident was a very, very tragic and a very sad one. So we're reviewing whether or not it's appropriate for us to do another audit. I think there's no doubt that the legislature and the governor are looking very carefully at this as well. I hope they'll look at our earlier audit and recommendations as perhaps a starting off point for some real reformed. But we're reviewing the whole situation.
Brooks was beaten to death by over a dozen guards last month. The incident was caught on camera. No charges have been filed yet. New York Governor Kathy Hochul wants $8 million to improve security at the northern border. The State Department of Homeland Security says that money would be used to stem the flow of trafficked guns, drugs, and people. New York's northern border with Ontario and Quebec stretches for nearly 450 miles and encompasses some 30 counties. Last year, the number of illegal border crossings from Canada surpassed the number from the previous 17 years combined. The Pennsylvania Department of Human Services says a recent system outage prevented thousands of families from receiving child support payments. The story from Family Life's Brian Query.
Authorities say the state's contractor, Conduent, reportedly experienced an outage last week in multiple states. Conduent is responsible for dispersing child support payments in Pennsylvania. DHS officials say that just in Pennsylvania alone, the service disruption created a backlog of approximately $27 million in child support payments. Officials say the issue has since been resolved, and families were beginning to receive the backlogged payments this week. The outage impacted over 100,000 families. Brian Query, Family Life News.
Thank you, Brian. Reaction continues to pour into the release this week of Dansville, New York native Ryan Corbett. He was let go by the Taliban in Afghanistan in a prisoner swap. Corbett had been in the custody of the Taliban for more than 2.5 years.
It was scary. At the same time, I thought it couldn't have happened to a better person.
David Theobald is pastor of the Grace Baptist Church of Dansville, where the Corbetts worship.
It was the culmination of all that we've been praying for and working towards for 2.5 years. So overwhelmed with joy and praise.
The 42-year-old Corbett is recovering at a military base in Texas before flying home to Dansville with his wife Anna and their 3 children. The Pennsylvania Game Commission says a bear that attacked a Carbon County man this week tested positive for rabies. The Jim Thorpe man was walking to the store on a trail from his home on Sunday when he was attacked by a black bear. A neighbor who witnessed it shot the bear dead. Rabies cases are rare in bears. Wildlife experts believe this bear was looking for food. A new study finds smartphones could be making teenagers more aggressive and could be also causing hallucinations.
The study from nonprofit Sapien Labs found that the younger a person is when they start using a smartphone, the more likely they are to develop psychological problems. A majority of teens polled in the U.S. and India said they had feelings of hopelessness, guilt, anxiety, and unwanted strange thoughts. The study also found that the problems are more common with girls than boys. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
Sports news next. It's the 2-minute drill on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, they were tied going into the third period, but Calgary owned that period, and they scored 3 unanswered goals to drop the Sabres 5-2. Tage Thompson and Matthias Samuelsson both scored for Buffalo. In New York at the Garden, the Rangers are rolling, dominating the Flyers 6-1. Braden Schneider and Adam Edstrom scored in the first. Keandre Miller lit the lamp in the second. Philippe Hedl, Adam Fox, and Riley Smith found the back of the net in the third. The Blue Shirts have now won 4 of 5 and are 24-20-4 on the season. Owen Tippett had the lone goal for Philadelphia. The Flyers fall to 22-21-6. Out west, the Penguins did not fare very well against Anaheim. The Ducks snapped a 4-game losing skid with an easy 5-1 win over Pittsburgh. Also skating to victories, the Canes, Red Wings, Bruins, Utah, Vegas, Edmonton, the Caps, and Predators. The New York Knicks will start 2 of their own in the NBA All-Star Game. Center Karl Anthony Towns and guard Jalen Brunson both get starting nods. They will be joined by the overall vote leader Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jason Tatum, and Donovan Mitchell. The Western All-Stars has some pretty familiar names: LeBron James, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Nikola Jokic, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. On the court last night, your winners were the Spurs, Blazers, Raptors, Mavs, Bucks, Nuggets, Warriors, Lakers, and Clippers. And the Final Four in the National Football League will play on Sunday. The winners of the Bills-Chiefs game and the Commanders-Eagles game will play in Super Bowl 59. That is a look at sports.
All right, Randy, man, thank you very much. And still to come on the Noon Report, March for Life, Gender Order, and Protecting Girls' Sports. We're talking about it on Capital Connection after this.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. A.W. Tozer once said that what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. Not all beliefs are equally important, and not all ideas are equally consequential. But what we think about God, well, that's as important and as consequential as it gets. Tozer's books, The Knowledge of the Holy and the Pursuit of God, are in a line of essential reading about who God is. Others include J.I. Packer's Knowing God, Chuck Colson's Loving God, the Bible, of course, and most recently, Thaddeus Williams' book, Revering God. Williams is a professor at Biola University. He wants believers to get God right. So I asked Thaddeus Williams to describe why how we think about God is so very important. Here's Dr. Thaddeus Williams.
I commence every class I teach with the same two words: greetings, theologians. Though there are film, business, science majors, and more in the chairs, I greet all of them as theologians. It's not a gimmick. I want every student to have a deep sense of something R.C. Sproul loved to say, and that is, everyone is a theologian. Now, of course, not everyone will sport a tweed coat with elbow patches or cite Augustine in Latin, but however you earn a paycheck, or whether you can say theanthropos 10 times fast, if you seek to better understand your Maker, then you too are a theologian. In fact, the issues we tend to think about as cultural or political issues, abortion, racism, religious freedom, transgender ideology, and so on, are at the deepest level theological issues. And whether we think true thoughts about God will have everything to do with whether we can see the issues of our day clearly or whether we're blinded by the deceptions and propaganda of our age. So how are we doing theologically? Nearly a century ago, A.W. Pink lamented how different is the God of the Bible from the God of modern Christendom. The God of many a present-day pulpit is an object of pity rather than awe-inspiring reverence. With serious theology absent from so many pulpits, it's little wonder there's so much confusion in the pews. 65% of evangelicals believe everyone is born innocent, which, if true, means we don't need Christ as a savior, but only, if at all, as a life coach to move us from good to great. 43% of evangelicals agree that Jesus was a great teacher, but he was not God. But of course, if Jesus is not God, then he's not infinite enough to pay sin's infinite penalty, and we lose the best news in the universe. 2/3 of parents of preteens in America identify as Christian, yet only 2% believe a basic biblical worldview, with only 1/4 believing in objective moral truth or that life is sacred. So, calling all Christians, it's time to be good theologians, homemaker theologians, mechanic theologians, office job theologians. The church is in dire need of your humble service.
That was author and professor Thaddeus Williams. Williams is the author of the new book, Revering God. He's also a contributing faculty member for the Colson Fellows Program and a featured speaker at this year's Colson Center National Conference, which will be May 30th to June 1st in Louisville, Kentucky. His book, Revering God, is now available. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. And for more resources to live like a Christian in this cultural moment, go to breakpoint.org.
Thank you, John. Outside we go. Next, Kevin Williams.
Here is your Family Life weather forecast for this afternoon. Clouds, sun, flurries. Lake effect snow could still deliver a couple, 3, 4 more inches in some areas to the southeast of Lake Ontario. High today, 20s. Low tonight dropping back into the single digits. Tomorrow and Sunday, we'll have clouds and sun with flurries around and high temperatures in the 20s and the lower 30s.
All right, thank you, Kevin. It is Friday, folks, the 24th of January, and this is the Noon Report on Family Life. Welcome back to another edition of Capital Connection. Fridays during the Noon Report, we give you direct connection to what's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are Michael Geer at the Pennsylvania Family Institute and Jason McGuire with New York Families. And in case anybody cares, both their teams, the Washington Commanders and the Buffalo Bills, are still in the football playoffs, so they're pretty excited about that. Michael, you are in Washington right now, not for a Commanders game, but for a much more important reason. It is the 52nd annual March for Life, and I wanted to ask you right out of the gates, in what ways are we winning, and where do we need improvement in the fight to preserve life in this country?
Well, I think, first of all, I just am thankful that the temperatures are warmer here 2 days later than they were earlier this week here in Washington. And it's exciting to be here at the March for Life. This march has been going on. It's the world's longest lasting annual human rights march in the world. And it's been going on since just after the Roe versus Wade decision in 1973. And to see people turning out to take a stand for life is vitally important, especially, we had a wonderful victory in 2022 with the Dobbs decision, the Roe versus Wade decision, but the fight continues. Where we're winning is that overturn. There are states that have enacted very strong pro-life laws, but there are states that have gone in the other direction, and that is the reason why we need to continue to stand for life.
And we are so pleased to have you there, Michael, representing many of our listeners there in Washington with you today. Jason, we witnessed another big event this week in Washington. Back on Monday, we got a new president. Well, sort of new. How does a successful Trump presidency help Republicans in your state?
Well, I think it'll help tremendously. If you look at the last election, we see that there was a swing that occurred in New York moving more to the right. Now, there's going to be some challenges. I mean, we are New York. It'll be pushback against the Trump administration, but it also empowers the GOP members in Congress to get something done they can run on. And that's what I think voters will be looking for, to see if the GOP in the congressional level can deliver with this president.
Now, one of the 200 executive orders already in his first week in office was a proclamation that there shall be henceforth just two genders, male and female, in this country. Why is that such a significant move?
Well, it's very significant given what we witnessed in the last 4 years with the Biden administration pushing the radical gender ideology all across this country. The notion that a president, let's say 10 or 20 years ago, would make such an executive order, people would think, well, that's absurd.
Yeah.
But we know where the ideology has gone, and this is a breath of fresh air, certainly for those of us who stand for common sense and for objective reality.
Yeah, I saw in New York, the official New York policy is something like 30-some genders. Jason, I lost count. But this idea that there's two genders, male and female, what a novel concept. Does that play in at all in New York State politics?
Well, it'll play in a sense that's two things. One, where there are federal implications in New York, it will have an impact. Think of prisons and federal policies, federal agencies, things like that. It will have an impact. It will also have an impact on the public mind and just helping people to realize once again that they don't have to buy into the lies, the deception concerning gender identity issues. Now, look, respond with great compassion in the Christian community to those who are confused about their gender and what sex is. But it is important that we lay the baseline that says, no, it is male and female. And once again, people in New York and across the nation are okay in saying we are men and women, period.
Yeah, like Michael said, it's amazing. Just 10 years ago, we would be thinking a conversation like this would be crazy, but all of a sudden it has real significance in our culture. Michael, the 2025 legislative session is off and running. And you mentioned last week House Bill 26, what they're calling the Reproductive Freedom Act, and the dangers associated with that. Are there any other bills that you're keeping a close eye on this term?
What we're watching especially is the pressure for legalization of so-called recreational marijuana. Our team is gearing up for that, and we're already seeing legislation at least being proposed and talked about to deal with that, as well as to bring some what we think are probably relatively helpful restrictions on the medical marijuana that takes place here in Pennsylvania. But we're also seeing some positive things. We expect school choice legislation to once again be introduced that we will be supporting. And I know Representative Clint Owlett is one of the champions for school choice here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to seeing things happen there.
I know we just had Clint on last week. He's excited about those lifeline scholarships maybe becoming law this year. Jason, in New York, we talked about assisted suicide last week and how that may rear its ugly head again this year. What specific bills have you seen that should give our listeners pause?
Well, one of the reasons I'm not in D.C. this week at the March for Life is this week is the week that the legislature will always move its pro-abortion legislation. They do also try to coincide with that traditional day in which Roe was remembered. So we saw just a slew of bills. There were 6 or 7 pro-abortion bills that moved in the state Senate. They're shifting to the state assembly. And once again, New York is trying to Trump-proof itself what may happen with some of the incoming administration. And that is only going to make it worse for unborn children and their parents here in New York.
Well, Michael, the PA House is deadlocked again. It's 101 to 101. It was a sad reason for that. A Democrat near Pittsburgh, Matt Gergely, a young man, just 45, passed away suddenly. Our prayers and thoughts are with him and his family. But now it's official 101-101. So what happens now?
Well, we don't expect any particular changes in the leadership. The elections have already taken place, choosing a speaker. The Progressive Democrats took control right at the outset of the legislative session this time. So really, until there's a special election, which is just announced, it's going to be March 25th to replace that seat. That's in western Pennsylvania, in the Pittsburgh suburbs, Munhall, McKeesport, and Clairton. Until that race happens, and that's a strong Democrat district, we don't expect any big changes.
Well, what can $252 billion with a B dollars buy? That's the price tag on the Hochul budget. And every year it comes out, Jason, I just say to myself, that's like 5 times more than Pennsylvania's budget. I just don't understand why a budget has a price tag like that, even in a state like New York. Your thoughts?
Well, I think $252 billion is the number Governor Kathy Hochul is hoping can buy an election in 2026 because it is that kind of a budget. She is claiming that this will give $5,000 back to families in New York. I'm somewhat skeptical that will actually happen as a result of this budget. But I know this much. It will not stay at $252 billion. It will probably grow from there by the time the legislature gets a hold of it. So we're probably looking at $256, $257 or more before all is said and done. The spending never stops in New York, and it's hard to understand how we can refer to this as affordable for the family when taxes just keep increasing in the Empire State.
Unreal. Well, Michael, and you're writing about this on your website. We'll give that at the end. Legislative efforts to protect girls' sports, which, in the transgender age we live in, it's a big deal. That seems to be gaining momentum in Pennsylvania. Critics will say, and I've heard this several times, that this is a solution in search of a problem. Is that really the case?
Absolutely not the case. I mean, Pennsylvania was front and center with the University of Pennsylvania swimmer Leah Thomas taking trophies away from and championships away from real women. But that case is not the only one. There are, high school sports and podiums, award ceremonies where girls are absent because a male who says he's a female has taken those spaces. So it's absolutely not a problem in search of a solution. And the American people understand that. It was one of the key issues in this past November's election. The polling numbers show Americans want to restore fairness in girls' sports, and we're looking forward to making that happen in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, we're seeing at the federal level as well. If that bill passes, it'll be great for this country, great for women in this country to finally have an equal playing field again. And then, Jason, finally, some really, really good news. After nearly 900 days in captivity, Dansville, New York native Ryan Corbett is back home. Just your thoughts in general. I know that you've been watching this story develop this week as well. What was your thoughts when you saw that headline?
Well, just elated to see how God heard and answered prayer. This is a family that was from the county where I lived. We are familiar with their families. My wife grew up on the mission field. In fact, a family member of Ryan Ryan Corbett was my resident director when I was in college. So we have some affinity with this family, and so I was pleased to be a part of helping reach out to members of Congress, encouraging people to contact them to get involved. But I am so thankful for Anna Corbett and just the way she fought for her husband's life, and God was gracious, and Ryan is home with his family again. We're just delighted to see how God has heard and answered prayer.
Amen. That is a wonderful story to report on this week. And that is all the time we have this week. But if you have questions about any of the topics discussed today, or if you want to just know more about New York Families and what it is, why you exist, the great work you do in Albany, Jason, where can folks learn more?
NewYorkFamilies.org.
And stay informed on all the issues in the news from the Pennsylvania Family Institute. Michael, where can folks find you?
PAFamily.org.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Capital Connection comes your way Fridays during the Noon Report. You can subscribe, listen to, and share this feature along with all our original podcasts at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or FamilyLife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. We head into the weekend, the final weekend of January, with a moderate weather pattern. There will be temperatures that'll be near seasonable levels, not too much wind, a little sun, and a bit of snow. No big ticket weather items are foreseen, but there'll still be some lake effect in the short term. For this afternoon, clouds, sun, flurries. Lake effect snow could still deliver a couple, 3, 4 more inches in some areas to the southeast of Lake Ontario. High today, 20s, low tonight dropping back into the single digits. Tomorrow and Sunday, we'll have clouds of sun with flurries around and high temperatures in the 20s and the lower 30s.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Finally at noon, today is National Peanut Butter Day. Bree Tennis with everything you need to know about Jam's favorite match.
Peanut butter is really a health food. It's loaded with fiber, protein, biotin, and vitamins K and E. Those help boost brain function. And it's yummy, unless you're among the 2% who are allergic to it or the 10% who just don't like it. There's even an I Hate Peanut Butter Facebook page. And that's okay. That means more Sammy's, sauté sauce, cookies, and plain old spoons full of goodness straight from the jar for us. I'm Bree Tennis.
Yeah, creamy, never chunky. Thank you, Bree. And that's our world, the world we live in, Friday, January 24th. Have a wonderful weekend. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at FamilyLife.org.